RPG Book Club, the podcast where we play a little bit of a video game and talk about how it makes us feel. I am Sam Allman.
I'm David Bernard Hauk.
I'm Maddie Grace Webben.
And I'm Sam. I always forget that I introduce myself along with you now. Sam, yes. Otherwise known as the Game Professor.
And today we will be discussing the sequence of plot at Kalm and the sequence of minigames at Junon. And as a reminder, this is our sellout game, and we sell out so that we can get eyes on our poll to choose our next game. And our next game is between Bernard's autobiographies, Skies of Arcadia, and Paper Mario. And let me tell you something. Our listeners usually hate us, and we will think we will get a shoe-in for, say, Breath of Fire or Shining Force or something. And we're like, well, I guess we'll just accept that that's what we're going to play. And then the little fuckers vote for the wrong game. And by the wrong game, I mean whatever they want. And this time around, however, it is currently the highest voter turnout we've ever had for a game, and every single one has voted for Skies of Arcadia. So if double the amount of voters want to come out and prove me wrong and continue the trend of our listeners being goblins that choose the wrong game, over 8 of you will have to go head on over to www.rpgbook.club. You have until the end of Final Fantasy VII, so there's plenty of time for this to turn around. But go and vote for Paper Mario if you want to make us play something that's not Skies of Arcadia. But this is the first time the listeners have ever agreed, and also agreed with those of us on the podcast, which is nuts.
Now, we love Paper Mario here.
Absolutely.
But we want to play Skies of Arcadia.
Yeah, it's definitely not, we really wanted to play Anachronox, and then everyone made us play Subterra instead. This is make us choose between our two favorite
and then
things.
The worst possible timeline, you had to play both Anachronox and Subterra Core.
That ruled. Best season.
But while y'all, as it were, head over to www.rpgbook.club to vote and make me eat these words. How was everybody's week?
I am sick.
You hate
to sound it.
I have the congestion, I have the sore throat, I have the muscle fatigue, I have the sort of light-headed brain not going at 100% speed.
Sounds like some kind of flu type beat.
I went to the doctor and they tested me for COVID, flu, and strep, and they all came back negative. I'm infected with nothing in particular.
Gross.
A nasty ass cold, I guess.
I guess.
That seems to be going around, because that happened to me a few weeks ago too. And it's been happening to a number of people at my work, so I don't know. Weird.
Probably another pandemic.
The Bernard flu.
Yes.
That sounds yucky. You should stop doing that. Just stop being sick. Don't do it. It's not fun.
I agree. It's silly.
That's a good plan.
It's kind of fun.
Look, there's a specific level of sick that's fun, right? Like where you're so sick that you can't go to work or whatever, but you're not sick enough.
And you have an excuse to like people don't get to like ask you to do things.
Yeah, there's that exact happy place. Too little, and you're just at work or whatever miserable. Too much, you're just miserable, and so
I did do my work today. I work from home, so I wasn't going in an office and infecting everyone. And let me tell you, I shouldn't have been working. It was rough. I was in a meeting with one of my colleagues, and at the end she was like, I'm gonna take some of your tickets so you can not have so much to do because of how terrible you sound. I'm a lot better now than I was, believe it or not. Anyway, that's all from me.
I had a pretty dope week. It's been very simple. I've pretty much just been working really hard and trying to be really, really good driving the truck, which it turns out I am, which is nice. Last Friday I scratched, which means I hit the pretty difficult goal that you're supposed to hit as far as like how quickly you deliver all the packages. Which was awesome.
Oh, I thought you meant like you scratched the truck, and I was like, oh no.
No. Scratches, that's just the term that they use. No, I'd be bummed out if that happened. I'd be disqualified probably. But at any rate, yeah, so I scratched one day and I was like, hell yeah, I'm the fucking best. Look at me go. I'm so good. And I haven't scratched since because they're not putting enough boxes on my truck. Which means I have to spend part of my day sitting around doing nothing. I think I complained about this last time. Well, I'm complaining about it again. And I keep telling them I need more boxes. How can I how am I supposed to show that I'm doing a really good job if you're not giving me enough boxes to do a really good job delivering? Funny problem to have because one thing anyone knows about UPS drivers is that we're horrendously understaffed and overworked all the time.
I guess normally, late November is just not a very busy time.
Well, that's the thing. Normally,
delivery.
It would be like, hey, can you please not give me 13 hours of fucking work? But since I'm still in training, it's like, no, I would like 8 or 9 hours of work, please. That way I can do a good job completing it in the allotted time. Instead of taking 8 hours to do 6 hours of work and it looking like I'm slow. And also, at first it was like, I'd bust my ass all day, and then I'd do nothing for an hour. But now, I already know ahead of time that I'm gonna be sitting around doing nothing, so it's really hard to muster the energy to go fast. So I end up taking longer with my actual work, because I'm just like lackadaisically walking at people's doors, knocking, and not, I'm not really booking it. Because it's hard to have the energy to book it when you know it doesn't really matter. Anyway, today I took it all the way to the highest level supervisor and was just like, hey, this is the problem. I keep wanting y'all to fix this and you keep not fixing it. And he's like, hey man, like, it's just kind of hard during peak season. Peak season we do have a lot of packages, but I guess because there's so many, it's just kind of hard to, I don't know. I guess it's just hard for them to make sure that I'm getting enough specifically because they're too busy focusing on like the full-time drivers. I don't know. I know that other drivers are like on the same route as me and doing packages. I'm like, just give me some of that guy's packages. But anyway, the point is, he said that that they're looking at how I'm doing and I'm doing a good job and they're not going to like hold that against me. They're going to take that into account. The fact that I'm not getting enough packages when they're assessing me. And I don't really know if I can trust that. I'm still going to contact my union steward and let him know what's going on. But that makes me feel better though. I'm like, okay, well, I just want to pass, and I just don't want anything to get in the way of me passing my probation. So if y'all are aware of the problem and it's not going to affect my performance, my review, then okay, cool, works for me. I'll get back into the hub at 5:15 and get home in time to podcast at fucking 6. Just get off my nose. It's still a little concerning, but it's pretty good. So anyway, yeah, I'm too good driving the packages. They do not have enough packages for me to deliver, which is fun. Also, I saw Glass Onion, which is incredible. It's really fantastic. There's a few things about it that are explicitly I don't think as good as the previous movie. The main thing is that none of the characters were like remotely sympathetic. None of like the suspects. Whereas in Knives Out, I thought a lot of the characters in this family had interesting little stories that they had some pathos. You really sort of cared about their little subplots. And this is just like, no, these people all fucking suck, and you're just gonna find out which of them actually kill somebody, right?
I mean, the people in Knives Out were pretty terrible by the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's more that they didn't necessarily seem awful at first, but they all were.
I still thought that at the end of the movie, when they wrapped up some of the little subplots, I still felt like I cared about whether they were. I like at the end when he finds out about like the cheating or whatever. Like, I don't know, maybe that's just me, but they suck. But I still found them to be characters that I could have empathy for.
Maybe that comes from the fact that one of them was Jamie Lee Curtis, and you gotta love Jamie Lee Curtis.
That's the other thing. I didn't think the supporting cast did quite as good. The characters also just weren't like as memorable. They're a bit more of caricatures. That's the only issue. Other than that, the movie's fucking incredible. And I wish I could say more about it because way more so than the first movie, I cannot even say like a single sentence about what I liked about why I like the movie so much without talking about like the thematic point of the movie, which also the movie is a lot more opaque about what the fuck is going on. So to talk about what the movie's even about is itself a significant spoiler, whereas like Knives Out isn't, right? Glass Onion, it takes a while for you to really get what kind of movie you're watching. It's really, really, really different. So yeah, that's all I'll say. So it's a lot harder to talk about, but it's a really great movie. Everyone should go see it if they can. I know it's limited release, so unless you live in a major metropolitan area near like a big AMC or something, you might not be able to see it, which is a damn shame.
I am going to see it in a few days, and I'm excited. Apparently, it's only in theaters for like a week.
Exactly. It's really a shame. But
it's not fucking Marvel movies, so can't be in theaters for a decent amount of time.
Yeah, not only am I glad about how the movie turned out, like the movie being good, but I'm also really happy with the way in which they're clearly sort of angling to turn it into a franchise. I mean, I'm sure you heard there was a 2-movie deal. There's already going to be a third movie. But, like, I guess what I'm saying is it's a very distinct thing to go from a single one-off movie to a series, right? Like, it's not just, you made another one. It's, this second one is very contextually different because now it is something different than it was before. It is a series. Whereas a one-off movie is different from even the first movie in a series. Like if you make a movie and already know it's going to be a series, that's different than if you just make a movie as its own movie. Right. So some of the subtle little shifts that they take in tone and theme and narrative, like this is not really a spoiler, but I'll just say like in between the last movie and this movie, Benoit Blanc is now like much more well known. So he's like the famous detective Benoit Blanc, which that's the thing that makes it more like other like what you'd expect from a series, right? Like Agatha Christie series and stuff like that, right? It's like the adventures of this famous detective. That's just one example of the many sort of slight pivots and refocuses that they do as of like, okay, well now we're making unknown number of these movies, not just one or two. So we need to do some little shifts like that. And I really, really like it. And not only is it a great movie, but I can't wait for the third one. That's all I got. Oh, also, we totally watched Knives Out as one of our movies when we did Danganronpa. We should totally try to find some contrived reason to watch Glass Onion for the movie for one of our games. I think we should do that.
If you ever play Earthbound, we can be like, that has lots of Beatles references. Beatles sang about a glass onion one time.
I don't care how contrived it is. It's just like, we already did the first movie in the series, so we should find some excuse to do the next one.
Yeah.
Or if we play something completely weird like we just did, and you're like, never mind, we're just going to watch Silent Hill because we like it. We can do that again.
I actually can think right now of what the very obvious hook will be. But again, it would require spoiling not only the theme of the movie, but the reveal of like the killer and all that stuff. So I won't say it, but I do have it in my noggin.
Cool.
So that's it. I drove a truck a lot and then watched a movie.
I got dumped.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But it's chill. It was one of those things where like I could tell it was coming, and it was based more on like incompatibilities than like anything that happened. And the good thing about being poly is renegotiating from a romantic relationship to a platonic one is a lot less like life ending. So it's chill and whatnot. It's just been weird, but yeah. So I've been dealing with that. we had thanks we celebrated Thanksgiving this year. We usually don't. But we were busy getting divorced when Mabon rolled around, the pagan harvest festival at the equinox. So we were like, okay, well, we still want to have a giant feast day because that's important for your life. So we celebrated it this year, but we decided to celebrate it like 4 or 5 days ago, which is way too late to try and like buy a turkey and defrost a turkey in time. So we instead are doing something that we think will be our Thanksgiving things forever. Is don't make a feast, just play the hits. So when just planning our meal prep for the 2 weeks surrounding Thanksgiving, we just were like, okay, on Thursday, we're going to have mac and cheese, and we're going to have ham steaks, and we're going to have sweet potatoes, and we're going to have rolls. And those are going to be fantastic. And that's just the meal we're going to have. Because then not only do you get a Thanksgiving meal, next week, when it's time for this meal and the meal planning again, we get to have it again. And it's amazing and awesome. And we didn't have to spend all day yesterday cooking. We just had Thanksgiving-y things for dinner, and it was amazing. And I highly recommend that if you like Thanksgiving food and you don't want to cook forever for Thanksgiving. It was very delicious. And the mac and cheese this time around is the absolute best that Summer has ever made. And I'm going to process mine and Summer's divorce so that I can marry that mac and cheese.
Right.
Yeah. It was real good. Yeah, other than that, I caught up on all of the new Star Trek except for Discovery, and it's good. I think I talked about Strange New Worlds last time, but I finished Lower Decks like 3 hours ago, and it's surprisingly great. The same way that like the Orville is making a parody of Star Trek and accidentally made a fantastic Star Trek show while trying to make jokes. Lower Decks is the same way. Like it's jokes, it's haha, it's funny stuff. It's also canon, which is hilarious. But it happens to make fantastic Star Trek television by joking about how silly Star Trek television is, and I highly recommend it for anyone who is a fan of the 90s era Star Treks, because Lower Decks takes place right around the end of it so that characters can come back and be contemporary with their previous things, but they can reference everything that happened. So it's like Voyager just got back to the Alpha Quadrant like a couple of weeks ago when Lower Decks picks up, and it's really good. It's really, really freaking good. And I am very excited for season 4 whenever that happens, because seasons 1, 2, and 3 were fantastic. What about you, Sam? What was your week like?
Let's see. Played more God of War Ragnarok, which is pretty good so far. There's been a lot of discourse about it in game crit circles, some of which I kind of understand, but I'm not generally a fan of, this entire storytelling format sucks and is bad opinions. But it's, that's been fun. I've been enjoying it. I don't think it's the pinnacle of video game storytelling or anything, but the story is compelling. The characters are great. The writing is funnier than I ever would have expected from a God of War game. It benefits from having a cast of characters who don't exist just for Kratos to brutally murder. So that's been fun.
I heard something hilarious about that game that I think is fantastic. So, did y'all hear about the the guy that wrote Boy in the Striped Pajamas wrote a new book, and he Googled how do you make red dye, and what came up was a Breath of the Wild fact and not Wikipedia or anything.
Yes.
No, I don't know what you're talking about, but I understand now because you just said it.
Yeah. So, God of War accidentally did the same thing, but they realized it, and then they're like, it's cool, we're going to keep it anyways. So a huge chunk of the plot revolves around the character Loki finding the pieces of his mask and putting them back together so that he can regain his powers, which is the plot of The Mask by Jim Carrey and not anything from Norse mythology. And so they were like, we need Loki to have a thing so that we can have a plot. Loki doesn't have any things in Norse mythology. Let's give him the mask from The Mask, the 90s movies. So, yeah, the mask is canon to the God of War universe.
That rules. No, I love that. That's extremely good.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love it.
That is pretty great. So yeah, good game so far. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. My dogs are making a lot of noise.
That's fine.
Let's see what else happened this week. Not a whole lot. A new server opened up recently on Final Fantasy XIV, so my partner and I made characters that look exactly like Hildebrand and Nashu, which, if anyone listening has played that before, knows that's a fun thing, but I don't think anyone here has. So
I don't know what that means.
Believe me, they're characters from the game's like optional comedy side quests, and they're an absolute delight.
Hildebrand. No, those guys are great. I wasn't expecting you to be making characters in FF14 that were a reference to something that's also from FF14.
Yeah, when a new...
I played just enough to have met those characters, and they're hilarious.
Apparently when a new server boots up, a lot of people rush in to try and make characters that look exactly like existing NPCs and get the name of that character accurately before someone else grabs it. So they're just...
Y'all managed to snag it.
Yeah, there are just a ton of people. We're in a free company for characters that are... based on in-game NPCs, and it's got like 200 people in it. So, it's very fun to like go into duties or whatever and have other players like recognize and do Hildebrand emotes at me and stuff. So that's been fun. Let's see. We did our yesterday was Thanksgiving in America, and my partner and I don't really celebrate it, but we do watch Paul Blart Mall Cop 2 and listen to the yearly podcast Till Death Do Us Blart about it. And we couldn't do that last night, unfortunately, because my partner burned their hand on a cast iron skillet. So
ouch.
That was rough, but thankfully it's doing all right today, and we finally got to that. Let me tell you, yearly rewatch of a movie that interestingly bad is an experience, and I recommend it if that is your thing, and definitely don't if it's not. So yeah. I think that's about it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Dope. So, let's listen to a tiny sliver of one of the best soundtracks of all time. Pray we don't get sued, and then we'll talk about the plot.
So I wrote these notes back when I walked amongst the living, but now I don't walk there. So Maddie Grace is going to read them.
So it's going to be like Bernard's specific style of writing and not my idiotic style of writing, but coming out of my mouth. So it's going to be feeling some Bernard valor here. United Auto Workers three different bargaining units at the University of California system are still on strike for almost 2 weeks now. You should donate to the strike fund. Really sucks. I was helping out with that, but then I work 6 days a week now, So I can't, and it sucks because I have massive FOMO. But a lot of what's happening is shit that I put work into despite not literally being there. So I feel proud of myself, even though I don't get to do the fun part. I should have said that earlier. Literally, pause the podcast, go donate money to these people. Okay, anyway. So the gang arrives at Kalm and reconvenes at the inn. The gang, as a reminder, being Cloud. We don't know much about him. Extremely cool guy. Definitely a really cool guy.
Super cool.
Aerith. She's real nice. Not really. She's feisty. She's got something going on with her. The bad guys want her, and we don't really know why. Tifa. She punches people, but is also everyone's mom. And finally, Red 13 is a dog. I don't find him to be a very interesting character, but I know I'm in the minority on that. So, they left Midgar after having lots of adventures.
Barrett?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I forgot Barrett. Oops.
Wow,
I just forgot. I think my brain thought I'd already said Barrett, and even though I hadn't said Barrett. Barrett's literally the best character in the entire game. We don't really know much about him yet, except that he's really sweet and is not a very good organizer, in my opinion. But he's trying. Also, neither am I, so I'm not one to judge. Like, I get it. So the gang arrives at Kalm, and they reconvene at the inn. Barrett asks what's the deal with Sephiroth and the crisis facing the planet. If you recall again, Sephiroth showed up in the last episode and killed a bunch of people. No one knows anything about Sephiroth except that he's famous, and Cloud is like, oh my god, it's Sephiroth, we gotta fucking get him because of plot shit that I haven't told y'all yet. So Barrett asks him to tell us yet. So Cloud says he wanted to be like Sephiroth, so he joined Soldier. He worked with him on a few missions and got to know him. They were like comrades until that day, 5 years ago. The gang enters a flashback. This is an extremely lengthy flashback, and it's playable. That's kind of passé nowadays, but it was a big deal at the time. So, Cloud, Sephiroth, and some Shinra goons are in the back of a truck. One of the goons is motion sick. Cloud is really hyped about the mission. Cloud talks about how his hopes of being a hero died when the war ended. Sephiroth briefs the team on the mission. They're going to investigate a deteriorated Mako reactor in the town of Nibelheim. There's been a malfunction, which caused a bunch of monsters to spawn in the region. Cloud's surprised that they're headed to Nibelheim because that's his hometown. Then a giant dragon slams into the truck, and the soldiers hop out to fight it. Cloud and Sephiroth fight the dragon in the actual game's battle system. You only control Cloud. Sephiroth acts on his own. And this is how we know that Sephiroth's strong, because Cloud does normal amount of damage, and Sephiroth does like 10 blazillion damage. It's really cool. Present day Cloud narrating says that he was mesmerized by the way Sephiroth fought. Cloud says, and I quote, he was doing like 10 billion damage.
Yep.
That's my joke, by the way. Bernard didn't write that. And I'm saying that not because I want to brag, but because I don't want Bernard to I don't want y'all to think that Bernard is stupid. So then they reach any of the good jokes you can assume were his, the bad jokes you can assume were mine. Anyway, so then they all reach Nibelheim. Sephiroth asks Cloud how it feels to be back in his hometown. He says Sephiroth says he wouldn't know because he doesn't have a hometown. Cloud's like, what about your parents? He says his mom was called Genova, but she died in childbirth. Again, those of y'all listening might remember Genova is a weird thing we saw written on a weird lab thingy last episode. And his father, ... creepy laugh. Barrett's like, wait, we saw something gross called... Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said this. We saw something gross called Genova in Shinra Tower. Tifa says, yo, let Cloud finish the story. So Nibelheim is deserted. Everyone's shut inside because they're scared of either the monsters or the Shinra soldiers. Sephiroth tells Cloud, hey, you can go visit your family and friends for the rest of the day. So there's lots of cute, interesting stuff happens if you explore. It's largely optional and will be covered in memorable moments. You meet a traveling martial arts master who says he's training Tifa. Cloud heads to the inn, and Sephiroth tells him that he hired a guide to take them to the reactor tomorrow. The next day, turns out that our guide is Tifa in a cowboy hat. Cloud is surprised. Tifa's father sees her off and is worried about her, but she says the soldiers will protect her. A local photographer insists on taking a photo of Cloud, Tifa, and Sephiroth. He says he'll get them each a copy of the photo once it's developed. The gang heads to Mount Nibble, where the Mako reactor is. They have to go through some caves, and they find a Mako spring. Tifa says it'll disappear if the reactor continues to suck up Mako energy. Sephiroth points out a large chunk of materia and says that's condensed Mako energy, and it's rare to see it in its natural state. Cloud asks, why can we use magic when we equip materia? Sephiroth says, the knowledge of the ancients is sealed inside materia, the knowledge to manipulate the power of the land. It binds us to the planet and calls forth magic. Or so they say. And as we know in JRPGs, if so they say something, it's always true. Sephiroth then says a man once told him we shouldn't use unscientific terms like magic. Cloud's like, who was that? Sephiroth says it was Hojo of Shinra, an inexperienced man who inherited the work of a great scientist. A walking mass of complexes. Sounds like me. The group continues on to the Mako reactor. They make Tifa wait outside while they investigate. We recognize this place from a very brief flashback we had previously. We don't know anything about it besides that we've seen it before very briefly. Sephiroth and Cloud enter a strange chamber filled with all these weird, like, person-sized pods, like a whole bunch of them. We can't see inside the pods, but it's like the kind of creepy, fucked up pod you'd have if you had a person inside of it. At the top is a locked door labeled Genova. Sephiroth disregards it, or seems to. He indicates that one of the pods is broken and is causing the malfunction. He tells Cloud, hey, close the valve on that pod. While Cloud does that, he looks into another pod. Whatever is inside affects Sephiroth in some way. He muses Hojo is still no match for Professor Gast. He tells Cloud that this system condenses and freezes Mako energy. Normally, it would become materia, but Hojo is doing something different with this equipment. Cloud looks in the pod and sees a hideous monster. Sephiroth says, normal members of Soldier have been irradiated with Mako, different from normal people, but still human. But these have been exposed to far higher concentration. These are the monsters, and Hojo created them. Grotesque life forms, Sephiroth calls them. Sephiroth, distraught, realizes he might have been created in the same way as these fucked up monsters. He draws his sword and slashes all the pods. He says ever since he was a child, he felt like he was different from the rest, but not like this. A pod malfunctions, and we see the monster inside fall out, writhing grossly. Present-day Cloud explains that after they returned to Nibelheim later that day, Sephiroth locked himself in the inn, and not like locked up, he stayed in the inn, and he wouldn't speak to anybody. But then he just disappeared. So, some more playable stuff. And eventually you find him in an old unoccupied building in Nibelheim, and the villagers call it the Shinra Manor because people from Shinra used to live there a long time ago. Cloud enters Shinra Manor to look for Sephiroth. I will say Shinra Manor, all-time great video game location.
Yes.
It's just fucking rules. It's got all kinds of great shit in it that we can talk about later.
We're gonna visit it a few more times, so.
Exactly. This game, anytime something really awesome happens in this game, the game knows it's awesome because the game's like, yeah, we made that awesome because it's important to the plot and you go there 5 times. That's why we made sure it was awesome. Anyway, so we go to the Shinra Manor to look for Sephiroth. Cloud finds a secret door, which leads deep into a basement filled with bookshelves and scientific equipment. Cloud finds Sephiroth reading one of those books. Sephiroth reads, quote, a seemingly dead organism was found in a 2,000-year-old stratum. Professor Gast named the organism Genova. Genova is confirmed to be an ancient. Genova project was authorized. Mako Reactor 1 approved for use. Sephiroth wonders if his mother's name also being Genova is just a coincidence. He wonders why Professor Gast didn't tell him anything and why Gast had to die. Cloud tries to speak to Sephiroth, but he just says he wants to be alone. Cloud gives up, and Sephiroth confines himself to the manor and continues to read all these books obsessively. Eventually, Cloud goes to check on him again. Sephiroth greets Cloud and calls him a traitor. He explains, this planet originally belonged to the Cetra, who would travel the cosmos, unlock a planet, and then move on. At the end of their journey, they would find the promised land and supreme happiness. However, some Cetra elected to stay put and lead what Sephiroth calls an easier life. They took that which the Cetra and the planet had bestowed upon them and gave back nothing in return. Those are the ancestors of Cloud and also the rest of humanity. So, to me, it seems like traitors, like, you betrayed the cause of the Cetra by being, like, cucked, basically. It's like, instead of doing what you're meant to do by going on this cosmic journey, you just, like, chilled and stayed on Earth. And was like, cool. Well, not Earth, I guess. You're just like, cool, we'll just stay here and live a normal life. Which is being a traitor. Long ago, disaster struck the planet. Humanity's ancestors fled in all directions and hid. But the crisis was averted because the Cetra sacrificed themselves. After that, humanity continued to multiply. Now, all that's left of the Cetra is these reports that he's reading. Sephiroth then says the Genova Project intended to create humans with the abilities of the Cetra, and he was the one that was created. Professor Gast, the leader of the Genova Project, created Sephiroth. Sephiroth marches past Cloud and says he's going to go see his mother. Cloud steps out of the manor and finds that the entire town is engulfed in flames. He sees
Sephiroth
Sephiroth.
did quick work on that town.
Yeah, he was like 5 seconds ago.
Also, I gotta say, probably the most menacing the sentence "I'm going to see my mother" has ever been.
Yes. So Cloud steps out of the manor, and the whole town is engulfed in flames. He sees Sephiroth cutting people down one by one, and then heading toward the mountain. Cloud chases after him, running to the Mako reactor. He sees Tifa there. She's kneeling over her father's body. She says she hates Sephiroth. She hates Soldier and Mako reactors and Shinra and all that stuff. She grabs a sword from the ground and rushes deeper into the reactor. Cloud follows her. Sephiroth stands in front of the door to Genova. Tifa rushes at him with the sword, but he very easily disarms her and then slashes her. She falls down the stairs. Sephiroth enters the chamber where Genova is. Cloud picks up Tifa, who is nearly dead, and he moves her a few feet. Then he chases after Sephiroth. In the chamber, we see some sort of mechanical humanoid thingy with a huge tube coming out of it. You can just Google FF7 Genova. It's a very iconic, fucked up little weird sci-fi monster alien type
Looks
creature.
like a fucking foul C.
Yeah. Oh, when I say alien, I mean alien like the movie, not it's an alien. It's very it's very Geiger. So Sephiroth speaks to Genova and says that they should reclaim the planet and head to the promised land. Cloud enters and asks Sephiroth how he could do this to his family, his hometown. Sephiroth speaks to Genova again, saying she was destined to rule this world. But they, ... those worthless fools, ... stole the planet from her and her people. Sephiroth rips the mechanical form from its pedestal. Really famous FMV here. It's awesome. He just grabs the whole thing and pulls it up, and you hear there's like tubes popping and electricity like crackling. He rips the thing out of its pedestal and reveals a giant glass cylinder containing the true form of Genova, except she still has a head at this point. Very important. Cloud says that his sorrow at losing his friends and his family is the same as Sephiroth's sorrow. Sephiroth says he's not sorrowful. He's laughing, actually. He says he's the chosen one, chosen to rule the planet, given life in order to take the world away from humanity and reclaim it for the Cetra. Cloud and Sephiroth both ready their blades. The screen flashes between the two of them and then fades to white. Present-day Cloud says that's the end of the story. He doesn't remember what happened next. Obviously, he couldn't have defeated Sephiroth, but Sephiroth was declared dead in the media later. So who fucking knows, man? Cloud says he needs to know what happened, why Sephiroth didn't kill him. Aerith asks about Genova, and the gang realizes that Sephiroth must have been the one who stole Genova from Shinra Tower. Barrett is tired of all this exposition and says, it's time to go. Before they leave, Tifa asks Cloud how bad she was when Sephiroth attacked her. Cloud says he thought she was a goner. Anyway, Barrett gives Cloud a cell phone, which he can use to change party members. Cloud asks around town and hears that a man in a black cape carrying a huge sword was headed toward the fields over yonder. The gang heads over yonder and finds the Chocobo farm. All right. So that's the flashback. You may have noticed Bernard shared a lot of interesting details that might not seem very important. Great job, Bernard. Every single thing Bernard said here was extremely important. And we'll come back later.
I don't remember the plot of this game very well, but I was like, we better note that the Shinragoon is motion sick.
There were a whole bunch of little bitty details that you put in here. I was like, nice going, Bernard.
It was a mix of knowing what I already knew from playing the game a long time ago, and also just knowing storytelling and being like, surely the photograph is important.
Yeah. Basically, this entire game is a giant mystery where, as you can already tell, Cloud doesn't know what the fuck happened in this flashback, and we don't know, Cloud doesn't know, even though he was there. And Tifa doesn't know because she was unconscious for a large portion of it. And the other characters don't know because they weren't there. Sephiroth presumably knows, being the villain. So the reason why I kept going on and on last time about how this is like the most important fucking scene like ever in fucking games or whatever is because this game structure is absolutely brilliant. So this game has just plopped a giant fat fucking mystery in our lap, and the entire rest of the game is going to be teasing out this mystery. It's really, really awesome. And I can't wait for you all to find out sort of the developments. So anyway, so we go find a Chocobo farm. So now we're saying, you know what? The only way to solve this mystery is to catch Sephiroth, who's obviously up to no good, but we don't even know what he's up to. We just know he's up to no good, right? So we're going to go chase him. So the owner of the farm says, well, in order to keep going the direction you want to go, you got to get past this marsh, and the marsh has this giant serpent monster called the Midgar Zolom, which is, it's obviously some Norse mythology reference thing. I don't give a I mean, I actually could say what it is, but I don't care. And you'll totally get owned by it. So you need a Chocobo to get past it. The gang's like, well, I guess we'd better head over that way in case that's where Sephiroth went. So we got to go through this whole rigmarole to get a Chocobo. It is all completely unnecessary. Except it is kind of fun to catch Chocobos, and later it becomes like a whole side plot minigame thing. So here the game makes you do it a little bit. So you catch a Chocobo, and you ride the Chocobo past the marsh to the mountains. In case you're curious, yes, you can theoretically fight and beat this monster, but you would need to level up a whole bunch to do it.
So I'm playing on the PS5. I have, with a click of a button, I can become invulnerable and have a limit break every single turn. Mm-hmm. I was having the worst Chocobo luck in the entire world, and I was like, you know what? We got to record tonight. We ended up not recording on Monday, but I was like, we got to record tonight. I need to get through this. So I'm just going to stop trying to catch these Chocobos, and I'm going to click on my cheat codes and just kill this serpent and move on. If you're below whatever X level they want you to be, like I guess it was to stop people from cheating with Game Sharks back in the day or something, it will literally drop a nuke on you that deals max HP damage. And the way that invulnerability works in this game is the moment it calculates your damage, it then heals you for the same amount. So since it does max HP damage, it kills you in one hit, and your invulnerability doesn't matter. And it made me so upset that I couldn't cheat to kill this thing, because I know obviously it's set up to be come back at the end of the game and get some kick-ass rewards, but they don't want you to have those rewards until you come back at the end of the game.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I never actually tried it. I just figured that you could do that. Neat. Anyway, so yeah, there's a convenient cave going through the mountains that we can use to follow Sephiroth. At the entrance to the cave, the gang sees a Midgar Zolom that got totally fucking owned. Cloud's like, I wonder if Sephiroth did this, because he's good at fucking owning things. In the cave, the gang runs into a couple of Turks. There's Rude, who we've already met, and a new recruit, Elena, who's there to fill out the team while Reno recovers from getting owned earlier. Elena must be...
Just for the record, Elena's great. I love her.
Oh, yes, big fan. All the Turks are doing the whole, like, villain that like in the in FF6 it was like Ultros, right, where it's like, oh, you're gonna fight these guys multiple times and they're sort of, you're like, they're enemies but like you like them, you're just kind of on opposite sides, rivals. The Turks, they're Team Rocket, right? Turks are one of the best versions of this. I really love them, and anytime they show up, great music plays. So anyway, Elena must be some sort of silly person because she explains their orders for no reason. Their orders are to determine where Sephiroth is going and keep Cloud and company from interfering. Thing enters and is like, shut the fuck up. Do your job. Elena's like, yes, sir. We will do our job of tracking Sephiroth, who's headed for Junon. Thing is like, shut the fuck up. Rude tells the gang Reno's eager to get revenge before leaving with Elena. If Aerith is there, she and Sang talk for a bit. He says she's no longer a priority. They'll be seeing less of each other from now on. He tells her to take care of herself and stay out of Shinra's way. He leaves. The gang heads through the rest of the cave. In the forest outside of Junon, so we're out of the cave now. So in the forest outside of Junon, a mysterious ninja attacks them. May or may not attack them. They kick her ass.
It can happen anytime, but you do it now because you want it to happen as soon as possible.
So this is a major optional thing, and first time I played the game, I did not encounter this at all. It wasn't until I, much later in the game, started using an FAQ for some stuff. I was like, what? And then I went and ran around in a forest for no reason to initiate this extremely important optional section of the game. This game put some of its best stuff that is like canon and important and like a major part of what makes the game as technically optional content. It's strange.
Both of the characters that aren't Cloud that got side spin-off games are optional characters. They are so canon that they are part of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, and yet optional.
And I will say,
because they also got very popular, so it makes sense.
Yep. And I will say the other optional character that isn't this one is also extremely important to like understanding the actual plot of the fucking game. Deeply involved with the actual plot of the game, unlike this character. So anyway, in the forest outside of Junon, you may or may not be attacked by a mysterious ninja. You kick her ass, and she's like, let's go again. You can't take me. Bob's like, sure, kid. Anyway, she's named Yuffie, and she ends up joining the party for no particular reason, except after the rest of the gang starts walking away, she's like, all according to Keikaku. Keikaku means plan. What did you guys think?
Now, Maddie Grace said that the stupid jokes would be hers. That is a stupid joke from Bernard.
That's true, but I would have made the exact same joke had I been writing these notes.
Yes.
Because we're dumb. Did anybody name Yuffie something stupid?
I didn't find Yuffie. I thought the forest in which she could join your party was after Cosmo. I didn't realize I could do it right now.
Yep. Any forest on the world map after this point exactly.
Apparently, the further you go in the game, the more advanced forest you're in, the more likely she is to appear. So as you're going through the game, you'll become more likely to find her.
But you definitely want to get her by the end of Disc 1 because... Oh, wait. When does her major content lock off? Disc 1 or Disc 2?
I don't fucking know.
I think it's somewhere in 2.
Well, at some point, an extremely lengthy, elaborate side quest that is her whole fucking like reason for existence becomes locked off and you can't do it anymore. And I did not get Yuffie until after it was her side quest was already locked. First time I played the game, which is very funny. So, make sure you do that.
You need to be able to fly to get there. I'm fairly certain, or at least
you can
sail
boat
throughout the ocean, which
you can
takes
boat over there
a while. But I don't know.
You're right. Maybe it's just Disc 3. Disc 3, a lot of the optional content gets locked off because they didn't put it on the third disc.
Right.
because her disc was all FMVs. Anyway, point is, Yuffie's awesome. She's just kind of ditzy and cute, and everyone loves her.
I love so much also that if you fail the conversation with her, like if you, there's a specific set of things that you need to say for her to join you, and if you fail,
that's right.
Or like if you go into a screen at all, like there's a save point there, and if you go up to it and try to save, then you get out of the save, and it's like, hey, where'd she go? Why's some of our money gone?
Oh
like,
yeah, I totally forgot about that.
There's so many
thing.
endings to that, including in a weirdly meta sense, anything that takes you to like a screen, another screen, or whatever.
Yeah, the idea is that like
gone and some of your money's gone too.
I love the idea is that like because you went into the menu, it's like you weren't. It's like you looked away for a second, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the gang is like, hey guys, let's all turn our backs on Yuffie for a second and look at our inventory, and then a second later they're like, oh, where the fuck did she go? Yeah, it's which actually is a joke that's reused from FF6, but it's better here. In FF6, it's like really weird actually. Anyway, so the gang, along with Yuffie, may or may not with Yuffie, enters Junon. It's a run-down little town, but above it is a sparkling city on a plate, much like Midgar. That's just how Shinra does things, I guess. The gang wanders to the beach where a girl's playing with a dolphin. Her name's Priscilla, and she's immediately suspicious of the gang, thinking that they're Shinra narcs. But then, for no reason, a boss appears. It owns Priscilla. Cloud and company kill the boss. As I believe I mentioned for the first time ever on this podcast, I'm not actually playing the game this time. I recall this boss being really hard. Is it actually hard?
Yeah, it's pretty hard.
Yeah, it's weird. Like this game, this game is the first FF game, and maybe even the last FF game. It's a unique FF game in that it has really bad, out of nowhere for no reason boss syndrome. Like most of the time, bosses tend to have some plot reason for existing. It's like this is a character, or we're killing a monster. This game is like, hey, you're going through a cave. It's technically a dungeon, therefore, oh no, a big monster showed up at the end. You better kill it. That happens a lot in this game. Anyway, after we kill it, an old man runs up, calling for Priscilla. She's not breathing. He tells Cloud to give her CPR. You have to do one of those little bespoke, in tiny little micro games where you breathe at just the right time to do mouth-to-mouth properly, except it doesn't tell you when that time is. You just have to guess. There's a meter, and you have to do this you have to do this one spot on it, which isn't marked at all. It's maybe the worst one of these. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them in this town. Yeah, and this is definitely one of the worst in the whole game, which is frankly saying something. Anyway, after a lot of trial and error, Cloud saves Priscilla's life. The old man carries her away. The gang heads back to town. A woman tells them to come into her home for a minute. She heard what they all did for Priscilla. She offers to let him rest there. The gang goes to sleep. In his sleep, a voice speaks to Cloud. He asks who the voice is, but it just says he'll know soon enough. More importantly, when Cloud was in Nibelheim 5 years ago, where was Tifa when she wasn't acting as their guide? Why weren't Cloud and Tifa able to see each other apart from that? Cloud says she can't remember. The voice suggests asking Tifa. The gang is woken up by clown music. No, this music fucking rules. Shut the fuck up.
It's cloud music. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's for clowns.
It's not just for clowns. It's basically a Sousa march. Are you suggesting that Sousa marches are for clowns?
I might.
Honestly, I was in band in like junior high, and we did a march in a parade, and if we could have played this instead of the clown shit that we did play there, I would have been very happy. I think the song slaps.
It's a real good, it is definitely a fucking dopey military march, and it is like a little, it's got some elements that make it a little bit more like lighthearted and weird than your typical military march. But anyway, yeah, it's a good ass music, not for clowns. Clowns would hate this song. Cloud asks Tifa where she was 5 years ago. She's like, I don't know. It was 5 years ago. Let's check out the good music. The gang gathers outside and runs into Priscilla. She thanks them for saving her and apologizes for thinking they were narcs. Barrett asks what the good music is all about. Priscilla says it's a rehearsal for the new Shinra president's inauguration. Priscilla says her grandparents told her this town used to be beautiful, but after Shinra built the city up above, it got all gross and bad. The gang wonders if Rufus is thinking of crossing the ocean, and if Sephiroth is too. Barrett says they need to get up above. They're not allowed to take the elevator, so they gotta climb the support tower. Except, it's electrified, so it'll kill them. Priscilla says Mr. Dolphin can help them get past the electrified part. The gang's like, well, Cloud, this is potentially deadly, so it's all you, buddy. Cloud has to swim under the pillar and call the dolphin from just the right spot to bump up, to jump and carry him up to a beam on the support tower. That's right, it's another fucking stupid micro game. Cloud climbs up the tower and finds himself on an airship dock.
Fun fact about this micro game. It's really hard. It's terrible. You're swimming around trying to find the angle. You can't fucking tell what the angle is. But if you just press the button from your starting point, the dolphin will jump, take you to another point in the water. And if you just press the button again from that point, it'll jump and take you to the beam.
What?
Incredible.
I am
2 button presses.
so angry. Didn't something make me angry last time too, along these similar lines of some bullshit micro game thing that I didn't know? Okay, I'm mad about this too, and whatever the last thing was.
I think you were mad about something, yes.
Man, you know, Square got their start only making turn-based more importantly, menu-based RPGs. They made games where you didn't move a character around in real time, okay? Like, everything was just fucking menus. And here, they first started to be like, what if we have these, like, real-time, almost, like, action-based interactions in the game? And you know what? It was the start of a long, long journey, and after, like, 25 goddamn years, they eventually found out how to make action games. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. So you get to the airship dock, and I'm going to editorialize here, the coolest airship in the world is docking at the airship dock. And the game highlights this to a degree where you're like, that airship sure is cool. I wonder if it's important. Cloud wanders into some sort of barracks. He's mistaken for a Shinra soldier and told to change into his uniform and get going because the president's reception is happening. So then, this is the part where, like, you have to march and shit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Bernard just writes after a stupid mini game, but I want to say what it is. You have to pretend to be a soldier, and I think it's like a string of like 3 different mini games, but it's all basically like you have to blend in with other soldiers. So there's a part where like they're all marching down the street in the parade, and you have to march like at the same speed as the rest of them. But the problem is that the game has 2 speeds of movement, walk and run, and neither of them are the speeds that the soldiers are fucking moving at. So you have to just kind of like oscillate, and it's jittery and stupid. And then there's also one where like it's like a Simon Says type beat, and there's also maybe something else that I already forgot because it's so stupid. And this whole time, this whole thing is being broadcast on the news, and if you start fucking up, the news anchors will be like, wow, who's that? So why is that one soldier stupid? And you also get graded because it's like, oh, we got to do a really good job, right? We want the president to be impressed by us. So you like get a score based on how much you didn't fuck everything up. And you get items at the end based on how that went. It's this whole extremely elaborate thing. It's all way less terrible than the stuff we already talked about, which is nice, but it is pointless and silly. After all that bullshit.
Or could I just say before we get to after that, one of my favorite things about that game being that if you fail, which you are likely to, if you fail bad enough, then the commentators will be like, what was up with that guy? Someone sent him a bomb or something, and your reward for it is a grenade. I guess
right.
They sent you trying to blow you up or something. It's
also,
very good.
So here's the reason why they're so bad. They're all like, again, they're all ad hoc, they're all bespoke. You get one shot for each of them, which on one hand is cute. Like, if you totally fail, it doesn't matter. It's fine. It's just narrative shit. but it's basically like a bunch of medium to bad tier Mario Party minigames. But in Mario Party, they let you do the little practice mode before you actually play the game for real. And everyone has to say like, okay, I'm chill. We can all hit start now and actually play the game because I've done the practice like twice where it explains how it works and you get to just play it. This game, you don't get to do that. It's just like, hey, you're doing this now. The control scheme is whatever it is. And also in this game, up never really means up.
It doesn't.
What up, down, left, or right mean is always very contextual. So you just kind of got to fucking figure that out too. And then 10 seconds later, it's like, all right, it's over. You did terrible, dude. LMAO. And you're like, shut the fuck up. Yeah, at this point, I think it rules. But most of the time, it does not rule. So Cloud and the rest of the soldiers are now lined up in front of Rufus and Heidegger. The latter tells the former that the long-range airship is being prepared, and will be ready in about 3 days. Rufus asks if the water ship is ready, and Heidegger says yes, they'll launch on the double. They exit. The soldiers gossip about how that man in a black cloak has been roaming the city, but no one can find him. Rumor has it was Sephiroth. Cloud gets shepherded back to the barracks, where he's instructed on how to do another stupid minigame to send off Rufus at the harbor.
This is the Simon Says one.
Yeah, you're right. They're not all in a row. The soldiers then head to the harbor and do that stupid minigame. As Rufus and Heidegger board the ship, Rufus comments that if word gets out that Sephiroth was here, Cloud and the others will show up. After they're dismissed, the soldiers comment that Heidegger's been on edge ever since Hojo resigned. Hojo hasn't been heard from since. Cloud and the rest of the gang sneak on board the ship dressed as Shinra soldiers. Yes, even Red 13. How does that work? We'll find out next week, buddy. And that's the end of our notes. Kind of a weird place to end it, but we all agreed that we couldn't think of a better spot.
Awesome. So, let's listen to some more Final Fantasy VII music, and then we'll talk about our memorable moments.
I hope it's the music that you called clown music.
Yeah, no, we're definitely doing Rufus's fucking inauguration ceremony for this track.
The listeners must decide for themselves. Can I just say I absolutely love PS1 software instruments? There is the Super Nintendo ones are good too, but there is something magical about this era of video game music. It does not sound real, but it sounds good in its own way, like real adjacent in a way that's good instead of uncanny. It's just fantastic. I love it a lot.
Yeah. Well, by the time you get to FF9, their samples are all so fucking high quality that it all just sounds like it's phenomenal, the degree to which it just sounds like real instruments. Like Chrono Cross as well, man. Like Chrono Cross, whenever the fucking MIDI sample guitar is playing guitar shit, they put in fucking like slides on the string. Like you can hear the fucking strings like squeak from the fingers sliding around. Like that's some fucking dedicated MIDI sound right there. But FF7 is not at that point. To me, it's like the horn, the string, here's the thing about this game. The percussion is incredible. The percussion sounds are all stupendously good. And this game's got a lot of really percussion heavy tracks. So whenever something like funky or fresh is playing and you got some really cool elaborate percussion shit, it sounds really, really, really fantastic. But whenever like horns or strings are playing, it basically sounds like an SNES game. And it's a really goofy juxtaposition.
Yeah, horns I think are the ones that games that like software instruments in general took a while to really figure out. Honestly, I think the strings sound like they don't sound real, but they sound way better than the horns. The horns are the things that I think at least
they sound better than the horns. That's true. Also, boy, Nobuo Uematsu sure loves his goddamn like oboes.
That's true.
This game was like, I think maybe the first one in his long love affair with the oboe, and given that it's FF7 and FF9, they sound mad goofy.
Yep, fake computer oboes.
the whole sound font thing of the PlayStation is way better than strictly samples of the Super NES. Like you can just do so many more cool things because it's way more robust of a music creation tool, and that's why
I don't actually know how the PlayStation sound stuff. I thought it was all just samples. Does it have some built-in sound stuff that isn't just playing samples?
I don't think it's built in, but I think you have a big enough fucking disc that you can include it. It's like
because like obviously the Sega Saturn was out because the Sega Saturn was out here just doing straight up like FM synth for everything, which is insanely cool. I mean, pulse code modulation. Wrong term. FM synth was what Genesis was doing. Yeah. Maybe there's some PCM going on in the PSX. I have never looked up how PSX's sound shit works, but it definitely has a unique vibe. Even though the games on the console all sound very different, there's definitely something about the hardware definitely gives it there's definitely some shared vibe, which implies that it's not just samples. Because if everything's just samples, then it sounds like whatever samples you use. So no two games will sound the same. There is some through line between various PSX soundtracks for sure.
Yeah. I am not sure, but
I might look it up while we're talking.
It's good. Yeah, I currently have the Wikipedia for sound font open right now. So we'll probably update you by the end of the memorable moment section on how it all worked. But memorable moments. Who's got them?
Well, I've just got a couple, but I'm going to go last. So,
well, since I've usually got so many, I can go first then.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. We could talk about this forever, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the whole flashback with Cloud and Sephiroth and stuff I love. There are a lot of reasons why I love it that I cannot talk about yet, because we haven't gotten to some extremely important stuff that affects it. But, I don't know. It's fun to see past some of Cloud's, like, young Cloud in the truck or whatever with Sephiroth is very like excitable and inexperienced, and Sephiroth is legit just trying to be like, hey, chill, calm down, like we're going on a mission, it's fine, whatever. And I know that there are complicated elements to this, but I do like that once again we're just kind of seeing a side of Cloud beyond the stoic cool guy he is trying to project and clearly just putting on a front for. That's great. I love, but you know what? No, I cannot talk about that yet. Never mind. It is something it's something about Sephiroth's whole thing in comparison to another thing that happens to another character later that I can't even talk about vaguely. So never mind. I do also love the way that the other characters will sometimes interrupt the flashback. You get like these weird little comedic bits where they're asking dumb questions or something, and Cloud's just like, let me get back to the story. Come on. So let's see.
Also, there's stuff where if you try to do certain things, Cloud will be like, "No, I didn't do that," and then you don't like if you try to go in certain buildings, Cloud will be like, "No, did I go into that building? Yeah. No, I didn't," and the game doesn't let you, which is fucking great.
Yup, it makes me think a little bit of a few years later when Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time would come out. And, the prince is, like, narrating the story, so whenever you die, he'd be like, wait, sorry, that's not how it happened. Let me tell that part again.
I didn't die.
I just keep accidentally saying that I fucking died.
Yeah, frankly, it makes a lot more sense here. In Prince of Persia, it's a little bit silly. It's like, why did you, every, like, couple minutes, do you just be like, yeah, and then I jumped into some spikes and died. Wait, no, I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's Prince of Persia is just a way that I love, honestly. Huh?
In Prince of Persia, it's just a cute little thing.
Yeah.
In this, it's a major thing.
Yeah, it's just a cute quirk. But it's a quirk that is very stupid when you think about it for a second.
Yeah, it does, in addition to its narrative significance, also sort of a similar way to, like, sort of cordon off some content. Like, oh, why can't I go into this house? Well, it's because I didn't. So, in that way, I guess it's more like Assassin's Creed, right? Like, hey, you can't go on a murder spree because your ancestor didn't do that, so stop. But yeah, all right. Oh, I had one question. Okay, one thing I noticed that I found really interesting, and I'm going to start it with some theology. It's extremely like simple theology. Anyone who grew up in religion probably know this, but in Christianity, at least, you refer to God and any pronouns referring to God, even if you're just saying him or whatever, with you capitalize it all the time. Like even if you're just saying, "Ah, yes, His grace" or whatever, you capitalize His, the H in His. Sephiroth's dialogue capitalizes the P in planet, and I did not notice if other people do that. Like, is that always capitalized when other characters talk about the planet, or is it just when Sephiroth does?
I wasn't paying attention to that because I didn't pick up on it, but I do believe that just because I've played the game multiple times, I think it actually is, and that's because, like, what you're saying, I see where you're going with that, and that's really interesting insight. However, I think in this case, it's because the planet's never named. So when people say the planet, it's like the way we would capitalize Earth, except they just never fucking gave the planet a name. So they call it the planet, capital
Isn't
P.
it called Gaia, though? Or is that outside of the game itself? Is that something from extraneous content?
So I just Googled the planet's Dian cloud so I could see the text box and when Barrett says planet, it is not capitalized.
Ah, there you go. I could have misremembering.
I'm guessing when Eris says planet, it's probably capitalized.
Interesting.
That'd be my guess.
But I can't confirm that.
Yeah, I'm going to try and pay attention to that.
We can definitely imagine that Sephiroth is capitalizing it on purpose for the reasons that you're saying.
He's saying it a little different, and you can tell.
Yeah, I really love the idea that, because, the theology, so to speak, of this game, I guess it's not theology so much as like metaphysical, I don't know, but the planet is pretty much the closest this game has to a god, like it's, there's a word for the type of, the type of spiritual belief that the planet and live stream and stuff represents, but I don't remember what it is. Like it makes sense in the mythology of the world of Final Fantasy VII to treat the planet in kind of a godlike manner in some ways. And so the idea that Sephiroth of all people, who's just with his whole thing, would do that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a really cool little linguistic note. So yeah, that's a thing I thought was cool. Also, while we're talking about that, there is a specific shot in the basement, like, library of the Shinra mansion when you're talking to Sephiroth and he's explaining a bunch of this stuff, that's like a really tilted shot with Cloud in the foreground, and then all the way down the hall there's Sephiroth.
Oh yeah,
and it is
great
extremely good. Like that, I know we've talked about this already, but it amazes me that the whole cinematography, pre-rendered background stuff was so like revolutionary and new, and that this game did it as well as it did. It's not the greatest example of it, but it is a damn good example of it, and for it to be that at the point where it came out is legitimately very impressive. There are some gorgeous shots in this game, and it's very cool.
Well, one thing that's neat about this game is that you go first, actually.
So when I first played this game, that was the thing I remembered, because I had, prior to playing Final Fantasy VII, had played Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger, and both of those are like, hey, what if instead of doing top down the whole time, we move the camera for these special set pieces? In Chrono Trigger, you do besides the like kind of low thing in the courtroom, you also have side scrolling out on when you fight the dragon tank and whatnot, and then you have again low by the orchestra in the opera, and then side scrolling in the opera and above the opera with Locke. And that's basically the only thing they could do on the Super NES, but they took that idea and cranked it up to 1,000 in this one. And so although Final Fantasy VII almost doesn't resemble Final Fantasy VI at all, that you could see where they're like, hey, we got to do this twice, and it looked pretty cool on the Super NES. Let's do it as many times as we want, because all it takes is time to re-render from a new camera space after we've made the 3D models of the backgrounds. So let's do it a bunch, and they do, and it's really fucking cool.
One thing
It's a
that's very
format.
important to note is that Resident Evil came out about a year before this game. And I think the time scale is probably a bit too tight to say that they were inspired by Resident Evil or took influence from it, probably. But it is still interesting that the game came out about a year after Resident Evil because so much of its best stuff is so reminiscent of Resident Evil, like especially in the fucking creepy mansion, right? But like
Yeah.
the way that it uses pre-rendered a succession of pre-rendered backgrounds to add drama to your scenes, to add tension, you're always walking, so often you're walking into there's so much z-axis movement, which is just a great way to add drama because you're walking forward at something down into the screen or up out of the screen, right? And it's like later games with bigger budgets would just do this fucking constantly, but this game it's like I'd say like 70% of the time you're playing the game, you're in a large pre-rendered background of a large area where your character is relatively small, and it kind of just feels like an SNES game but fancy. But then, like the other 30%, you're in these fucking Resident Evil ass dramatically composed things, and it's usually not in the dungeons. It's usually in the stuff where you're pretty much just doing plot shit, right? Like if you're in a place that you're pretty much just doing a series of, you might as well just call them interactive cutscenes, like that's going to be using the dramatic FMV angles and stuff because they explicitly know that this location only exists for the purposes of telling this dramatic story. Whereas if you're in a dungeon, it's like, well, you're not here to, you're not here to have drama and excitement and like suspense. You're here to go around a maze and get treasure and fight monsters. So we're not going to be pulling that shit here, right? It's so good though. It's so good.
Yeah, it's very good. I'm sure I've already mentioned this before, but I fucking love fixed camera angle stuff in general. I'm very sad that the format's fallen out of style. And it works really well in this game, and they do some great visual stuff with it. So yeah. Okay, just two more things. One, I assume we're going to talk about it in detail eventually, so I won't go into it a lot. But Fort Condor also becomes available.
I didn't fucking go there.
Yeah, this is at least the second, because I know it happens in 6 sometimes. Time that Final Fantasy basically tries to do a tower defense minigame, and it's bad.
It's the second time. Yeah, it happens at F6 as well.
It's a whole ass like side quest, and you can't do all of it right now, but you can start doing it, and it's a thing. Again, I assume we're going to talk about it in more detail eventually, but I just wanted to note it because I think it's interesting, and I also kind of hate it. So
to explain a little bit more so that people aren't confused what we're talking about, remember how you may or may not run into Yuffie? There's also this whole fucking location on the world map that you can just run past and ignore or stop by. You probably will stop by because at that point you haven't like stayed at an inn in a while, so you'll probably go there and just like stay at an inn and then progress on your way to Junon, maybe. I know that's how I typically play it. While you're there though, yeah, it's this giant fort, and I actually don't remember if they explain what the deal is with it, so we can always explain it later, but I'll just say from a mechanical standpoint, you're there, and it's like, you can play the game's second real-ass elaborate minigame. The first one was the motorcycle scene. The second one is this, where literally there's all these little troops, and they all have stats. They're not normal stats, they're special minigame stats. It's not like your regular stats. And it's a real-time game where you direct your little guys to move around and defend the big, like, bird, like the condor with its little fucking eggs, which is at the top. And I think Shinra's trying to, like, get him or something, and they're just holding him off, and it's got way too many mechanics. There's, like, 4, 5, 6 different types of units. You have to pick what units you're going to do, and I think you use money, use actual gil to hire them. It's really elaborate and stupid. You can play the bejesus out of it if you want. Yes, later in the game, you do have to.
Oh my god, is this the equivalent of the card games in 8 and 9?
In a sense, I guess it is.
Except that the card games in 8, because that's Triple Triad, right? It's not all that complicated, at least, and it doesn't take all that long.
And it's good.
It isn't played by watching a bunch of little low-poly dudes run extremely slowly up a hill.
Well, I actually would argue it's not that it's not complicated, it's that it doesn't seem complicated because its immense depth and complexity is interwoven through the entire fabric of the game's weird fucking battle system.
That's fair, and it also is one of those things where it has depth and complexity, but it's also fairly simple to like grasp its basics.
But this feels so much worse because you have to learn all these fucking rules, and it does not interact with anything else in the game. It's just kind of chilling. It's like, yeah, you can learn this whole other game if you want to, or you can just not, because you're here to play Final Fantasy VII, not a really, really bad RTS.
Yep.
Honestly,
I would now that I'm talking about it, I would love to like do an exploratory thing, like looking at video games that randomly throw RTS elements in, because I can think of a number of others that did this. Like a fucking Assassin's Creed game did it. Like there's just a point where it's like, hey, a bunch of dudes are coming for us, and you have to set your assassins up in different places, and then it's like, cool, you can do this again if you want. And I was like, no,
I'm good.
I've just played Yakuza 6, and it did something pretty similar, which was thankfully so easy that it didn't matter much. But, this is a weird thing that more games than you might expect have done. It's very strange.
There was something really funny that, what's his name? Tim Schafer? Is that the guy who makes the video games?
Guy,
yeah. The guy who makes the video games, yes.
Yes, the guy who makes the video games. He this infamously was a thing in Brutal Legend. And then I think it was during the Kickstarter for Broken Age.
That's right.
It was exploding, and he was like, if we hit this milestone, I'll add RTS elements. If we hit this milestone beyond that, I'll take them back out.
There were literally stretch goals to add and then remove RTS elements from the game.
That's incredible.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing up Fort Condor, because I completely just forgot about it, and it actually does matter.
It's I didn't actually do this time, and I'm probably not going to because I don't like it, but I did before, and I have it in my old notes, and I was like, I feel like it should be brought up. It's very bad. But yeah, my last memorable moment is the fact that after you do the whole thing where you save the little girl, Priscilla, and before the dolphin jumps you, can I just say how weird that is, like diegetically? Like,
yeah.
That a dolphin is like, yeah, sure, I'll help you get up to Shin. Like, it's just strange. Nothing in this game suggests that dolphins are smart enough to cooperate with you, but whatever. The thing that I love about this is that at some point in there, Priscilla's just like, hey, I've got a materia, here you go. And it's fucking Shiva. This random little girl who plays with dolphins is just like, here you go, I have a materia that summons a fucking god. You can have it, though, whatever. I don't understand how a little girl got a materia that summons gods, but, cool, I guess.
I believe that's the second summon you get. The first summon you get, though, is also interesting. It's when you get to the Chocobo farm.
Yep.
You can talk to the Chocobos, and you can say "que" or "que," and if you say "que," they do a little dance for a while.
It's very cute.
And then you get the Chocobo Moogle summon. It's pretty great.
Yeah, it's good. I will say one thing that I always think about in this game and Final Fantasy in general. Final Fantasy is kind of unique because it's more than most other JRPGs, I think, and also most fantasy games in general. Its mechanical magic abstractions are almost always actually important to the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to FF4, magic wasn't a big deal. I'm saying like people had magic, like it was just this is the role where people can cast magic, whatever. But the summons were actually a thing. Like one of your characters can summon monsters, and later you go to the world of summon monsters. Like it wasn't just like they didn't just add a menu option called summon and not explain it. It's like, no, this is part of the game's world and lore and plot to a degree that is somewhat important. FF6 turned that up to 11, where espers are the core of the entire plot. Like it's about a 100-year-old war between two different races who live in different dimensions, and that's where espers and magicite come from. The whole way your character advancement system is the plot of the game, right? FF7 does this as well, and it's really cool. Most games don't do this. Like most games just like have these things sort of as separate concepts, or it's like even if it diegetically is explained, it's not like it's the literal main narrative thrust of the game, right? And in this game, materia are just this thing that you use so that you can use magic because they wanted to think of a cool way to do it, because every FF game has to have a cool new way of doing magic. But no, materia are real things, they exist in the game's world, and they're a big fucking deal. But what doesn't do that is summons. Summoned monsters are not a fucking thing, they're not narrativized, they're except for one very important summon we'll find out about later. But no, actually, it's not a summon, it's a spell. There you go. It's just a spell. So in this game,
I feel, I mean, I might be remembering incorrectly, but I seem to remember that there is some kind of explanation for it. I thought that, like,
I'm saying there may or may not. There may not be an explanation. I'm just saying. I'm just saying whether it's explained or not. The fact that the literal knowledge of the ancients in Mako condenses into these things called materia is literally one of the most important plot details that makes the game function narratively. The fact that some of them can also make you summon like a Shiva monster, that's never whether they explain it or not.
It's funny because I don't fucking remember 5.
In 8, it's critically important.
6, it's critically important. In 8 and 9, it's critically important. In 10,
it's a huge fucking deal. Oh, yeah. It's the main thing with one of the characters is like, it's like this world's religion is a world in which these people can summon monsters, and that's how you defeat sin. Like, FF7...
They have to be important in 16, too.
FF7's magic system is extremely narrativized, but the summons are just fucking there. You know what other games like that? 12.
13, it's sort of narrativized. It's not important, but it's there.
13, 13 significantly less so. It's like,
they've been messing with how the summons work, I guess. Like, it's important to 13. It looks like it's going to be important to 16, but not in remotely the same way that it's been important in previous ones.
Oh, 15, it's a really big deal, which is cool.
Oh, yeah.
15, ironically, it's too big of a deal. 15, its summons are such a big deal that they actually don't exist as much mechanically, because it's like, if summoning a giant monster is such a huge world-changing event that it only happens in huge cutscenes, then you can't just have Noctis summon it every other battle.
The one time Noctis did summon it just for funsies, it weirded me out because I was like, no, this was like a 5-hour ordeal the last time I summoned Titan. I don't want Titan to just show up and kill these random bombs or whatever.
Goblins, Yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to highlight that because it is very neat that's the thing that FF games, like, they are very fundamentally stories about metaphysical lore, and in a way that often doesn't feel wishy and whooshy and like abstract. It often feels very material, like it's just how the world fucking works, man. But FF7 does not do that when it explains why you can summon Knights of the fucking Round.
Okay, if we don't talk about going to Tifa's house soon, I'm gonna go crazy.
Okay, you can talk about going to Tifa's house.
Yeah, mine are done anyway, so yeah, go right ahead.
I mean, I don't need to be the one to talk about it, but we as a group need to talk about it. But one of the places you can go in Nibelheim during the flashback is Tifa's house. And so you walk into Tifa's house, and then a dialogue box pops up of Tifa saying, "Cloud, did you really go into my house?" And he's like, "Yeah, I thought you might be home." And then you can continue exploring the house. You can go into her room, and she's like, "Cloud, did you really go into my room?" And then you can go and look at the piano, and she's like, "Did you play my piano?" And you can be like, "Yeah." And then you can do a little bespoke interaction where you play the piano. But more importantly, you can also read a letter and on her desk, and it has a bunch of character building for Tifa and the people of Nibelheim. But as far as I can remember, it's not particularly important, so I didn't put it in the notes. But it's neat, and you have to confirm like twice that you read the letter and remember what was in it. And then also you can steal her underwear, and she's like, "Cloud, what the fuck?" And you can be like, "I'm kidding." And she's like, "We're talking about something important here."
It's so
The
good.
whole thing is really, really, really good. But to me, I feel like she should just be like, "Cloud, did you really just go and rifle through all my belongings and click on everything in my house for no reason?" And Cloud should just be like, "Tifa, it's a JRPG. You go into people's houses and click on everything in it. What don't you understand about that? That's normal."
Yeah, I think this is the closest the game ever gets to like a Millennial Fair and Chrono Trigger type scenario where clicking around and doing everything actually has someone go like, "Yo, what the fuck? Why would you do that?"
Mm-hmm.
But I like how diegetically, like, it really works super great actually, because it's like this is one of many hints that the game gives you that like, no, Cloud's a fucking weird, goofy guy. Like, that is canonical. Like, whether this scene happens in your playthrough or not, it is still a goddamn fact that by the end of the game, Cloud's character is that he's a weird, goofy kind of idiot. And therefore, this scene, which might seem really strange at the time, in retrospect, it's like, yeah, no, that actually makes perfect sense for him. He's the kind of guy who would do that stupid shit like that. God bless.
Okay, we talked about going to Tifa's house. I'm happy now.
Good job.
Do you want to know how music worked on the PlayStation 1?
No.
Almost. I actually want to mention
definitely.
one more. I want to ask one more question.
Okay.
I actually don't remember if this happens in this flashback or if I'm just projecting memories from part that happens later in the game. Do you get the pre-winter background when you're approaching the Mako reactor in Nibelheim where the scale is all kinds of stupid? Like the scale of the size of things on the pre-winter background.
Just not have noticed.
Probably.
It might not be till you go there later, not in a flashback, but there's like the reactor exists kind of in like a sort of like a valley, like a mountain valley, and you're walking on this long fucking like metallic sort of industrial walkway, I guess you might say, like a raised walkway over like the rocky crags towards the thing itself. And it's just another example of the game just being very incoherent and inconsistent in its visual presentation of things. And in this particular case, it's like you're walking on like a normal sized bridge, but you're walking towards a thing in the background, which is the reactor, that by the time you get to it is like the entire reactor is like twice the size of your character model. And that is also inconsistent with it, but it doesn't just feel like a world map, because on a world map it makes sense. Like it's representational, right? These things are all, you're walking around like a miniature model of the world. But it's like, no, this isn't the world map, this is pre-rendered background, and everything else in it is normal sized except for the thing that you're walking towards.
I did notice that.
It's one of the I think most notable and one of my favorite instances of this game's weird scaling inconsistencies, and I very, very enjoy that screen. All right, how does the sound work? I was reading about it too, but you can explain it.
Yeah, so the PlayStation itself only has the same basic capabilities as the Super NES. It can play MIDI files that have X number of channels at X number of bit rate. Nothing super fancy there. But so on all the discs, everyone creates their own sound font that the MIDI engine will play, and so it's like pulling the samples. However, the reason all the PlayStation games sound the same is because everyone used the same Roland 88 sound font. So there was a Roland synthesizer at the time that came with sounds on it, and you could extract those to play MIDIs. And that's what everybody did. And so some people, like Chrono Cross, went in and did their own thing so they could have fret slides and things like that put in the MIDI. But if you were just making a game and you just wanted somebody to write music, not necessarily be a goddamn sound engineer from scratch, you would just use the Roland 88 sound font. And so,
well, there's a bit more, Sam, that I was reading. It also can do some pulse code modulation, but it's a very particular kind that is a lot less advanced than what the Saturn has, for the record. So that could be something too. But also, even if you're using samples, or of course you could, of course it should be noted that a lot of games you can also just do Redbook audio, stream directly off the disc. That was the whole thing, like turning off Persecator shit, right? But these games obviously aren't doing that, because if you do that, you only have enough room for like a couple tracks, because it's a CD's worth of audio, and it's a CD. The game is on a CD. In order to have as much music as Turning Off Persecator, you would need to compress it quite a bit, actually. But anyway, in addition to that, though, there were a number of effects that could be applied to the MIDI samples, or to the PCM shit, or to the any kind of like maybe like Redbook or streaming CD audio you might be having, and those effects could not be changed. You could not add new ones. You could not change the ones that were there. So like reverb, just like basic like sound effects, like reverb and shit and shit like that. Like, there were like, I already closed out the screen, but there were like, a dozen of them or so. And so that's why any game, even if it's got different sound fonts, even if it's streaming sound, if they're adding reverb, if they're adding some fucking flanging, if they're modifying the fucking envelope in certain ways, it is going to be the exact same for every single game, because those are like the 8 effects that the console had built into it. So that also explains the similarness that all this the unique character of these PSX games. And now we know.
It's awesome.
Also, the fact that all the trumpets go blah. That's all I got. I just wanted to mention the weird scale issues.
Yeah, I hate chocobos in this game.
Oh.
I don't grok with that whole thing. And I'm just going to walk everywhere from here on out, unless they, of course, force me to again.
They're a lot more trouble than they're worth.
Yeah. It's like, I don't even feel like I was like going any faster. Like on the 16-bit games, you hop on a chocobo and you're booking it. But here it's like, I didn't even feel like I was going fast. All I did was not get eaten by a snake.
Can I just say real quick on related to that note and the previous note that I am sad to say I think this is one of my least favorite versions of the Chocobo theme.
Oh, absolutely.
Mostly because it's mostly just fine, but it has this whole weird like guitar intro where they're I don't even know exactly what sound they're going for. Almost like a old time rock-ish sound, I guess. I don't really know.
Rockabilly kind of.
Yeah, and it's I enjoyed it a lot when I first played the game, but I've played other Final Fantasy games since then, and there are a lot of very good versions of the Chocobo theme.
Well, also, okay, I had to catch up to make sure I remembered what you were talking about. Also, this game that we're currently playing has another Chocobo song that's a million times better.
Mm-hmm.
Electric Day Chocobo is the one you're talking about, and it's all right. Yeah, it's got this old-timey rock and roll vibe. Actually, it's a little bit of surf rock. I mean, I like it well enough. But Cinco de Chocobo is incredible.
Yeah.
So, we'll hear that one later.
But yeah, that's about all that I've got. So, if you like what you heard today and you want to help us offset the costs of running the show, head on over to www.rpgbook.club, where any and all donations are put back into the show to make it better, offset hosting costs, pay for games, those sorts of things. If you donate $1 or more a month, you get access to our Book Club no Kaseki episodes a month before everyone else, as well as being able to vote on our polls and decide what games we play next. The poll is that we have live right now is live for the entire time we're playing Final Fantasy VII, and again, it's between Skies of Arcadia and Paper Mario. If you bump up your monthly contribution to $5 a month, you'll also get your name shouted out at the end of every episode. Just like this. Shouts to Kaldron, Freddie Rodriguez, Bernie L. Taylor, A. Ron524, Anthony Lerma, Vimk, Jfro Prime, and Doho. And if you then bump up your monthly contribution to $20 a month, we will not only read your name, but read a simple shout out to whatever you want. We have two luminaries. Our first luminary, Eliza Tantavi, wants you to check out critical-distance.com. It's an aggregator for good games criticism and journalism, and it's super good. And if in our other luminary, Carr is not a streamer, is barely online, so he doesn't have a URL for you. He instead wants you to brush your teeth 2 times a day, most importantly, the time right before you go to bed. For RPG Book Club, I have been Sam Allman.
I'm David Bernard Hauk.
And I'm Maddie Grace Webben.
And I'm the other Sam.
Here we go.
Toodaloo, folks.
Goodbye.